Hello everyone, this is the December Iowa chapter and Cedar Rapids Rail Fan slideshow. I'm here with Dave Kroeger today. Hello everyone, Dave.
Hello everybody, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you all out there today.
Yes, we're actually here stuffed full of turkey as we're recording this just a couple days after Thanksgiving. However, we are going to show you a program of the very early pre-Iowa interstate operation of the Rock Island Main Line through central Iowa. So, Dave, would you like to give us a little preview of what we're going to see?
Well, today we're going to take a look at a predecessor road to the Iowa Interstate. That would be the Iowa Railroad Company, which formed in 1981 back in Atlantic, Iowa, and first started operations out in the western part of the state in November of 81. And then got a lease from the Rock Island in May of 1982 to operate just to Bureau, Illinois at the time. Mm-hmm. They never did get to Chicago, never did get to Peoria. But this is kind of a little program that shows a little brief history about the Iowa, and we'll take a look back. And it was kind of an eclectic railroad, motive power-wise, and kind of I guess you would say, a wooden axle type operations, so to speak, because I've heard a lot of stories. Mostly true about the Iowa. So we'll go back in time, and maybe for those that weren't around then, this might be a good history lesson about how short lines and regionals came to be in Iowa. So
yes, and honestly, you talk about wooden axle railroad. That was the joke about the Rock Island before they shut down.
Well, Milwaukee Road too.
Yes. But honestly, it really is. It was a transitional period. It was a short-lived railroad, and there really isn't a whole lot of documentation that remains about it. So,
and a lot of the photos that you'll see today were. I want to thank. I'll credit each photographer as we go on, but I found a few Iowa photos on eBay. I bought some Iowa photos from a personal friend of mine here a few years back, and I was fortunate to have a couple good friends, Randy Williams and Alan Hunt, which some of you know. They agreed to help me with the program and contribute some of their material to this program, which you'll see today too. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started here. But without the Iowa Railroad and without the Iowa State, we got to talk about the Rock Island. So we'll throw a few Rock Island photos in here. This is a Rick Anderson photo of a westbound train taken at Menlo, Iowa, July 2nd of 1971. And this is taken between Menlo and Casey, Iowa, as the train's approaching the US 6 Iowa 25 overpass just between Menlo and Casey, right about milepost 406, 407, somewhere in that ballpark right there. And look at the power for this westbound train. I mean, you can't get nothing better than 4 E's on a freight. And, the Rock, they were never afraid to put anything on any train, that's for sure.
So, shall we spend 30 seconds and do just a little bit of setup for this? Because, the Rock Island folded operations up in March
31st, 1980. So we're going to take a few Rock Island photos here,
right
before the end.
And then the trustee got involved.
Yes,
and there was some directed service going on, and then it took.
And we'll go into that here as we get into the program. So we'll throw a few Rock Island photos in here first. On July 4th of 1971, this is a photo I got off eBay. No photographer listed on the slide. This is at Council Bluffs. This would become the Iowa Railroad and Iowa Interstate. Later on, their main shop out here was Council Bluffs. And you can see got some Rock Island GEs and a big Southern Pacific boat. Those SP was pooled some power, especially on the Rock Island Golden State route. You can find a lot of Southern Pacific power on that line, and sometimes SP power would wander on the Omaha main too. And I got a quick story here. I can remember in the summer of 1977 going out to see my aunt and uncle. They lived between Menlo and Casey, so I would see the Rock Island out there. And one day I can remember seeing an eastbound Rock Island train, and the last unit happened to be a Southern Pacific tunnel motor. It was my very first Southern Pacific engine that I ever saw as a kid. And my grandpa gave me Trains magazine all the time because he used to give that to me, and that's the only time you ever see Southern Pacific, would be in trains. But having a Southern Pacific engine in Iowa, I thought, man, that's pretty cool, you know.
Yeah. I think sometimes this SP Pool Power took some circuitous routes to get back home. I think that they borrowed it out wherever they needed it across the system before it got back to where it belonged.
Yes. Now, here's a photo I bought off eBay. Again, no photographer given, but this gives you a little history of kind of what Des Moines railroading looked like back in the 1970s. This would be a westbound Rock Island train. I think this is probably, I would say probably either train 43 or maybe train 59 to Denver, because you got some empty coal hoppers there for the Rio Grande. I think those came out of Iowa City, but this is a classic Des Moines shot here. Off to the far left, you have along the bluff, that would be the old Fort Dodge Des Moines and Southern. Then you would have the Rock Island, the trains on the westbound main, and then you'd have the eastbound main right there. And then where the signal is, you can see that's the former Chicago Great Western, now in Northwest. At this time, Northwestern. You can see Short Line Tower back there in the background, and you can see East 18th Street crossing. And you have the Iowa Transfer Yard down here. This is taken from the East 14th Street viaduct in Des Moines, and all of this now certainly has changed a lot, and they're building a new logistics warehouse basically right where this photo is being taken.
Yeah. The elevator that you can just barely see a piece of, that is still there.
That's still there.
And it still ships.
It still ships by rail, and that's where a lot of the NS grain trains for the Iowa Interstate go to in Des Moines. So yeah, there's a lot of railroad history in this photo.
But that's about the only thing that's actually left out of this photo.
And about one, maybe two tracks.
Right.
Yes.
Because I do think that the Iowa Interstate uses the former westbound main.
Yes, they do.
Here.
They do.
Yes.
Yep.
But yes, there's
a lot of history in that.
Web of railroads through downtown Des Moines.
Yes. All right, this is a Bill Reeby photo. This is taken at Newton in June of 1976 of a westbound train leaving Newton with a couple rebuilt Jeeps. Looks like a Jeep 40 trailing, and it looks like an airplane wing car right behind the third locomotive. So this is probably a UP run through. This is probably train 43 for Council Bluffs to the UP there. This photo is another Rick Anderson photo taken in November 1976, just between Casey and Menlo. And if you look at the top upper left of this photo, you see that house right there, and that
the white farmhouse in the
that's
barn.
my Uncle Steve's house.
Wow!
Right there. That's where I cut my teeth on growing up watching the Rock Island. They lived there till about 1979, then they moved to their present house. But that's where I cut my teeth, Tom, watching the Rock Island. Was right from this very area.
So I have to ask, because this is in a really deep cut. Did you scale the entire cut down one side and up the other to take this photo?
No, this is a Rick Anderson photo.
Okay.
So, and Rick was a former Rock Island dispatcher in Des Moines. His dad was an agent for a long time on the Rock Island, so he's got a lot of these shots out here on the West End. And you know, we got talking one time. He said, you know, my aunt and uncle lived between Menlo and Casey and lived on a farm just right south of the tracks. And we were looking at some photos here last summer when I visited him up in Clear Lake, and he showed me this photo. I said, hey, that's my aunt and uncle's farm. And he said, yeah, I'll send it to you. So, yeah, that's a pretty neat photo there.
Yes.
Here's a Bill Kuba photo of westbound. This is at Vernon, just outside of Iowa City, way back when, before Coralville and Iowa City got developed into what it is today. It's probably from 1977. We got a westbound with the 4320 leading there.
Yep.
Go to the next photo. This is a westbound again at just outside Marengo from 1978. And you can see the condition of the locomotives, and probably the Rock's financial condition is starting to dwindle day by day there.
Oh, yeah.
Go to the next one. This is a Wilbur St. Peter photo at Kellogg, Iowa from 1978. A westbound, 3 units there. And then, as we mentioned earlier, the Rock Island shut down on April 1st, 1980. And a lot of the main line between Chicago and Omaha was directed service, as we mentioned.
Yep.
So the Baltimore, Ohio, Chicago Terminal, or CSX as we like to call it now, operated from Chicago west towards Bureau, Illinois, Ottawa, Illinois, in that area. And then from Bureau to the Quad Cities stayed inactive. The Quad Cities to Wilton and then Iowa City was operated by the Milwaukee Road, which we'll have a couple pictures here besides this one. Iowa City to Newton was completely not operated for a couple years. And then the Northwestern operated from Newton through Des Moines out to Earlham. And then from Earlham on west, there was just nothing was operated during that directed service time. This is a couple Milwaukee Road Jeeps parked out front of the Iowa City Depot there in April of 1981. And the Milwaukee portion of the Rock Island was dispatched from Ottumwa. We'll see that here in just a second. If you want to go to the next slide, we'll do that. Here's a better photo. This is a Bill Kuba photo. It's of a westbound Milwaukee train coming into Iowa City. We'll interchange with the Crandic there. And a lot of the Crandic traffic at the time, they needed a place to go because the Rock Island had shut down. So the Milwaukee operated a train every day from basically they had from Wilton to Iowa City. They made a turn and then interchange with the Crandic, and then they would meet another train from Wilton, swap crews, and then go back to either Iowa City or Davenport. So, and a lot of this power you'll see, as you can see, were Jeeps. And it was kind of a neat operation, and it was dispatched from Ottumwa too.
And the side story to this, of course, is that the Milwaukee had literally just gotten done ripping up their own main line between correct. Cedar Rapids and Green Island.
Yes,
and they still wanted the traffic.
They still got the traffic, only
right.
just had to take a little different way. So.
Right.
Yes. Here's another photo. If we go to the next one there. Yeah, there's the same train crossing the Iowa River there at Iowa City. Bill Kuba photo. You can see the Crandic down there below. Here's another photo. This is a photo I bought off eBay from Ted Schneff. Ted took this photo. This is from 1984, actually. That's a westbound Milwaukee train crossing the Iowa River at Moscow, Iowa. Okay, so in August of 1981, the Iowa Railroad formed out in Atlantic by two gentlemen, Gene Schwab and Brian Whipple. Brian Whipple was a former SP official from California. So they started up the railroad in Atlantic, and their first train ran around November 10th of 1981. They had an engine, a former Rock Island SW, I think 1200. We'll see it here in just a second. Number 10. But what they did in the beginning was that they ran from Atlantic to Council Bluffs 3 times a week, and then they went east of Atlantic to like Adair, Stewart, in that area maybe once or twice a week at the time. So, and I do remember my uncle telling me he was kind of surprised one day. He was in Casey, I think, taking some corn down to the elevator, and he heard a whistle, and here come a train, and it had just a switch engine and probably a couple grain cars. So, yeah, that's how the Iowa started up, was out there on the west end. And there was another guy by the name of Paul Pellet, who was an Atlantic businessman. Him and some other people tried to form a railroad called the Atlantic and Pacific to maybe buy the Omaha, Maine at the time too, but I don't think they ever got her off the ground due to financing and so forth. So that was the startup, November of 1981. Here is a Rick Anderson photo in Council Bluffs of the number 10, which was the former Rock Island 927. This was leased through Greyhound Leasing, which the Iowa got a lot of their power through, some of their power anyway. And this is taken in Council Bluffs. You can see Interstate 80 here in the background, and they're doing a little interchange work.
Yep.
This engine was assigned out here to the west end for quite a long time. It's a Dick Wilson photo. This was taken right outside the front door there in Atlantic of their office. The depot in Atlantic was the Iowa offices at the time. Dick Carney, the superintendent, he was an old Rock Island guy. He also went to the Iowa Interstate. After the interstate formed, Lanny Kite was the track rider out there and a roadmaster. He also went to the interstate too. Those were 2 ex-Rock Island guys. And then you can see Brian Whipple there down below as the president at the time. Here's the 10 spot again. This is another Dick Wilson photo. This is taken in Council Bluffs in May of 1982. All right, so on May 30th of 1982, the Iowa struck a deal with the Rock Island trustee to operate the entire main line except through Des Moines, which was still controlled by the Northwestern, basically from Council Bluffs to Bureau. And so the Iowa ran an inspection train on May 30th of 82 from Rock Island to Bureau and back. And then on the next day, June 1st, this was I found this in an antique store outside of Des Moines. This is the very first Iowa Railroad timetable. Just 5 typed up pages. And if you go here to the next page, you can see they had a schedule for each train, train 1 and train 2, and they were called the Vultures. And that was a joke, a take on the CNW Falcon trains. Okay?
Yes.
So you can see why they're called the Vultures. So they started up, Des Moines or Altoona was the central Iowa base for operations. So what would happen was they would have a train come out of Altoona every day, train 1, run it west to Atlantic or somewhere in that vicinity. They would meet train 2 at Atlantic, and the crews would swap trains and then go back to either Council Bluffs or Altoona. Mm-hmm. And then at night, there'd be another crew that would go on duty at Altoona at like 8, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, take that train to Marengo, and then we'd meet a train from Rock Island and meet there at Marengo, swap crews, and go back to each terminal, Altoona or Rock Island. The reason that happened was because the only way the Iowa could run between Davenport and Iowa City is because the Milwaukee, still had kind of control of the operation there. So the Milwaukee was allowed to run 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., and the Iowa ran 8 p.m. to 8 a.m.
Right.
So that's how that worked out. And then Rock Island, there'd be a crew that would go on duty like 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and they'd make a bureau turn and come back the same day. This isn't a great picture here, but this is I have some Milwaukee Road train sheets from Ottumwa about the time the Iowa started up. So this is like the first, you can see on the far left here, the very first Iowa move with CCLX 903. That was a former Rock Island switch engine that they had leased from Kroeger crankshaft, and that was used in as the Altoona switch engine for the turn down to Pella and the turn to Newton for a little bit. So that was the first train that left Rock Island for west on June the 2nd of 82. And if you go to the next slide here, you can see there on the far right, on the same from Iowa City to West Davenport, that's the first eastbound that had come through with Iowa Railroad number 20, which was a U30B. We'll see more pictures of that in a second. You can see the train left around 7 p.m., 7:50, I think
7:50, yep.
Yep, with 2 and 1, and got to West Davenport 11:30 that night. So, Yep. This was the Iowa's depot, the old Altoona Depot on the Rock Island. That was their central Iowa base of operations. This is a Don Vaughn photo that Don sent me years ago. This building's no longer there, but that's where the Iowa was. Their Des Moines base of operations was right in that depot. And that's where the crews went on duty. These next couple slides are a couple Al Hunt photos of some trustee extras that they ran to move freight cars from Des Moines to Silvis and so forth. This is taken in Iowa City in June of 1982 here of 1341. If you go to the next slide, there's a 1344 a couple days later. So yeah, the trustee would run occasional trustee extras to move cars from one part of the system to the other.
Right. Sometimes it was for selling cars or disposition of cars that were being scrapped.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. All right, here's a Rick Anderson photo of the 5001, which would later become the Iowa 21 at Council Bluffs in June of 1982 there. You can see I-80 back in the background there. It's taken from inside the shop. There's a 5000, there it is again. As you can see, the Iowa got several of these U30Bs. I think they had, let me look at my roster here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. They were all built in the late 60s for the IC and later ICG. And they released from Central States Equipment in June of 1982.
So it's interesting because you think of the IC as being this totally EMD powered railroad, but they did have GEs.
They did have GE power.
They did
Not
at
a
least
lot
experiment with them a
Yes.
little bit. Yes.
Yes. It's the 5002. This is the Dick Wilson photo again at Council Bluffs in 1982, right before it got painted and became the 22. And there's the Pumpkin 5005, which would later become Iowa Railroad number 25. And that one lasted pretty much through the entire time the railroad existed. Okay, so here is, this is July 12th of 1982. This was like a ceremonial type deal that happened at Iowa City. It's a Tom Pursoon photo. Tom sent me these pictures of a little gathering to celebrate the service of the Iowa, especially in central Iowa. The guy walking on the platform there to the right with the gloves on, that's Dick Atwell. He later he was a conductor from, I think, the Des Moines area out on the west end, and he later worked for the Iowa Interstate as well. You want to go to the next slide there? Thank you. There's Dick again.
Yeah. They've really got the depot dressed up there with bunting and everything.
Yeah, and you can see the paint job on these things is, I think they took a paint gun to everything and just kind of spray painted yellow and everything like that, yellow and black for Iowa Hawkeye colors there. This is at Iowa City, same day of the 25 and the 22, and you can see there's a 949 and 957 there on the Milwaukee.
Yep. Looks like a bay window caboose there in the back, too.
Yes, yeah. Here's the 24, and this is the first Iowa Railroad engine I do recall ever seeing, because I can remember going out to my uncle's in late July of 1982, and we got there. I rode out there with my grandma and grandpa Kroeger, and about half an hour later, my uncle and I heard a horn there from Menlo, because you could, if the wind was right, you could hear everything. So we ran down to Casey and watched the 24 with 4 tank cars flag the crossing there at Casey, because everybody had gone in and stripped the wiring, copper wiring, and everything like that. So if the crossings weren't working, they had to flag each crossing.
Sure.
Yeah. That's 24. And this is a Gary Powell photo I bought off eBay at Rock Island in August of 1982. That's the 20. And the 21 there, you can see the 21's got 5001 number board still back there from its ICG days.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Again, this is it's a Bill Kuba photo from October of 1982 at Altoona. You can see the Milwaukee Road Jeep back there. I don't know what number that is, but right about this time, the Iowa had a lot of issues with these U-30Bs. So they started getting some other power, and that was some Milwaukee Road Jeeps. They had several Jeep 9s that they leased starting in about October of 82. So this is probably about October or so. You want to go to the next slide there. This is another Rick Anderson photo out on the west end out by Hancock Junction of Train 1 with covered hopper and piggyback flats. And Iowa was went after the piggyback business really hard, because a lot of that stuff came out of Newton, and a lot of that piggyback traffic, according to people I talked to, a lot of it went to the UP at Council Bluffs and then out towards the West Coast.
Yep. And that's still true of the Iowa Interstate, even today.
They don't have a ramp at Newton anymore.
No.
But their only ramps are in Chicago and Council Bluffs. But yeah, they had a ramp at Newton. They also had a ramp in Vernon, where the Hawkeye Express was parked for a few years. And they got some traffic, tried to solicit a lot of traffic from out of here in Cedar Rapids and so forth, but never really was successful in doing that.
Right, and they had the ramp at West Liberty they tried to operate.
Well, that was later. The lift. Yeah. That was later on in the Iowa Interstate days. Yes.
Yep.
There's a Don Vaughn photo of the 24 again. This is at West Des Moines, probably getting off the Northwestern there and going west on its own railroad. Don sent me that photo. If you want to go to the next one there. Mm-hmm. It's another Don photo at Altoona. So you can see they have 289 there. That was leased starting in October of 82, and you have the 24 spot down there holding the main line, and you can see the track is not the best at the time, my friends. So,
I mean, it's just how the Rock Island left it for them.
That's right. That's right. Here is, this isn't the best, but I just threw this in here. This is a copy of Timetable number 2, which was issued on my birthday, October 4th, 1982. At this time, Brian Whipple had left the railroad, so Gene Schwab was the chief operating officer and president. Some of the other people that were there, Tom Vogel. Tom later worked for the Interstate, and then he left to go to Heartland Express. Gary Swift was an ex-Rock Island guy. Later went to the Interstate, went to the IMRL, and I think he came back to the Interstate after that. Jimmy Tuttle, Dick Carney, Jim Van Dee, Dean Harkins, all were ex-Rock Island guys there too. Jim Van Dee just passed away here not too long ago. I think Dick Carney just passed away this last year too. So, Altoona's Bill Cuba photo here again of the 10 spot, with its Rock Island number board, 927, and the 24 there. There's the 24 again.
They just left those numbers in the middle in the same places and just painted out the zeros in the middle.
That's right. Here's, I don't have, this is about the only photo I have of 3 U-30Bs together. This is at Atlantic Train 2 in November of 1982, taken by Rick Anderson. You can see he's waiting for number 1 to get here, and then they'll swap crews, and then they'll head back to this crew here will take the west train to Council Bluffs, and then the crew that's coming in will take this train to Altoona. You can see the depot, all this has changed. The depot has been nicely done since this photo's been taken. The 2 buildings down back there, those are all gone now, and the track where that covered hopper is, that's long gone there too. Mm-hmm. Here's the Altoona Depot, a little bit better painted up after the earlier shot. It's taken in November of 1982. You can see the Iowa Sletta, a sign on the door there on the east end, and lo and behold, what do you got back there?
Well, you have some seaboard power.
Yeah. If we go to the next slide, we'll explain why. There's a Don Vaughn photo, 1354. So, Chrome Crankshaft there in Silvis got a hold of a bunch of these ex-Louisville and Nashville Alcos. So, the Iowa said, hey, we'll try them out for you here on a short-term lease. So, you'll see in these next few photos, there's a 1353, also out Altoona, taken by Don Vaughn. The Iowa used these Alcos on some of their trains there in like the fall of 1982 and into almost to 1983. Here's a Randy Williams photo of the 1335 again in the 10. This is at Rock Island, Illinois. And when word got out these Alcos were on the Iowa, a lot of people went down there and tried to get them when they did run. So here's 1335 again, and another Alco in the 10 spot on train 2. This is at Moline, Illinois, in late 1982 there. A Randy Williams photo. Same train going past the yard there at Sills. That's taken from the highway overpass there. You can see the track is, like you said, the rock lifted as it is. Another day, a couple more Alcos, 1335 again at Moline. I think this is coming into, west end of Silvis, but don't quote me on that. This is another Randy Williams photo there too. There's Silvis again. You can see all the Rock Island freight cars there waiting in deposition.
Yeah. And
all these L&N, they were all C420s, and they were all leased from November of 82 to January of 83 from Chrome Crankshaft.
The Chrome Crankshaft they operated the Silvis Rock Island shops.
Yes,
and that's where they operated out of until they were
bought out by National. Yep. Yeah. This is at Kelowna before the Diamond got wiped out in that derailment years later, but that's looking west towards Silvis there, the same train with the old Rock Island searchlight signals there. It's kind of a neat shot. That's a Randy Williams photo there too. Same location. And then going across the BN there at Kelowna after getting permission from the BN to get across. And that 952 there, that's a former LN Tennessee Central. I think that's an RS-36, if I believe. So go ahead and towards Silvis. So that was a kind of a interesting time. And the Alcos got returned back. So here's the 25 spot again. This is a Mike Vanna photo. This is at Council Bluffs in December of 1982 with the 289 back there. There's the 20, also at Council Bluffs, a Dick Wilson photo. You notice the Rock Island water tank. We had that in the earlier photo there from the 70s.
The Herald survives.
The Herald survived, yeah. It's long gone now. 21 again there at Council Bluffs. Here's the 311 at Altoona on New Year's Day of 1983. This unit was leased starting in October of 1982. And later on, these Milwaukee Heralds were just painted out and then stenciled IRRC. And then they kept the Milwaukee Road lettering on the hood.
You suppose that's where the Sioux Line got the idea for the...
I'm sure they probably did. I'm sure they probably did, yes. Here's a Don Vaughn photo of a couple more Milwaukee Jeeps on Train 1, downtown Des Moines in early 1983. Now, the Iowa, their corporate office was in the Rock Island Depot in downtown Des Moines. They leased a couple offices down there. The Northwestern had their dispatchers that controlled the Rock Island in there too, in the old Des Moines Depot for quite a while till they moved out of there to Boone later on in about 1984, 85. But yeah, the Iowa did all their corporate office was right here in downtown Des Moines in the Rock Island Depot. It's a John Leopard photo of train number 2 at milepost 148. This is out by Atkinson, Illinois. That's Interstate 80 in the background. This is taken in February of 1983. Okay, this is February 26th of 1983. This is Rick Anderson photo. This was the first train on the Audubon line that went out north out of Atlantic up to Audubon. Now, I should tell you, the Iowa leased 358 miles from the Rock Island trustee for $211,000 a month, and then another 67 miles for about 13 cents a car mile. Okay. And then the Audubon branch was leased for about $7,600 a month. During that time, the Iowa ran everything. So this is the first job that went up to Audubon. You can go to the next slide there. There's the same train. This up by Exira here. So this line, unfortunately, did survive into the Iowa Interstate, but was torn up here late 90s, early 2000s. Now about a 2-mile stretch of the Audubon branch just exists in Atlantic to serve the grain elevator and the ethanol plant there. So, yeah. 9431 was one of several IC Jeep 28s the Iowa had. This is taken at Altoona, and that lasted all the way through. They started leasing those in March of 1983, and those lasted till the end of the railroad. Here's a 9430 again. That's another Don Vaughn photo. That's taken at Altoona. The pumpkin.
Yes.
This is a Gary Powell photo I bought off eBay of the 25 9437 and another Milwaukee Jeep taken at Moline, March of 1983 there. Pretty good little lash up of power.
Yeah.
And a lot of grain. 25 again and the 9437. This is a Rick Anderson photo taken at Casey, Iowa in April of 1983. All right. This is an Iowa turnover sheet, dispatcher's turnover. I got one of these. I got several of these, actually. I just included one in the program thanks to Mark Amfar. I traded Mark some Northwestern train order books that I had from Boone. And I said, well, do you have any Iowa Railroad paperwork you'd like to trade? And he gave me some stuff, so it worked out pretty good. This is a typical day, May 25th of 1983 at 7 a.m. You can see what's going on the railroad at the time. Mark's notes about, train 1 and train 2 are down here in the bottom portion. You can see train 1 left Marengo at 3:50 a.m. that morning with 2 loads and 10 empties with the 310 and 311. Arrived at Newton at 5:45 with 7 and 5, and then arrived at Altoona 7:55 a.m. with 6 and 8. And now Newton to Altoona, Tom, is not very far.
No, it's really not.
That's about 2 hours right there to go from Newton to Altoona.
Right.
And you can see train 2 right below it. They arrived at Marengo 325 with about 25 cars, and arrived at Rock Island with 27 cars. So yeah, that's about typical running time. 40 mile an hour was the maximum speed, but there were a lot of slow orders out there.
I doubt there was any actual 40 mile an hour operation.
Probably not. No, you're right. And you can see Altoona there. They with all the business in Des Moines, they went down to Pella quite a bit. And they also, served Maytag there in Newton too. So,
I mean, honestly, it begs the question how they were even paying their bills running 27-car trains.
Yes, I know.
But I mean, this was it. This was short line railroading in the 1980s.
Yes, it was. It was. Here's the number 11. This unit was the second engine that the Iowa got. This was leased in May of 1982. It's former Milwaukee Road 659. I don't know why 535 is in that number board, but according to my roster, it was an SW1200. And this unit was pretty much kept around Rock Island during the whole time the Iowa existed. All right, now we're going to take a cab ride in June 1983. Al Hunt happened to had relatives in Des Moines, and he got to be friends with a lot of the Rock Island crews, or guys that had worked for the Rock Island and worked for the Iowa. So Al got a cab ride down the Pella branch. We're going to take a ride on the Pella branch here. This is just leaving Altoona. You can see train 1's consist there off to the left. It's a train. We're going to go down the Pella branch.
So he's on the main line, and you can see the connecting track.
Yep, and then you're looking straight like
we're looking to the southeast.
Yep. And that track is still there today. And you know what? Back then it's all farmland. Now this is all built up.
Right.
Yeah. Amazing. That's Prairie City, Iowa. Prairie City Depot there, an elevator, as they make their way down to Pella. There's the Pella Depot. And that building is still there today.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, no track. So, and they did a lot of work at Pella. Pella was a pretty big producer. They had Pella roll screen down there, which they served, and Vermeer, and a lot of business down there on that line. And that line lasted until about 1998 on the interstate, and then they pulled out of Pella, then cut back to Prairie City, and now it's just cut back to
just outside of Altoona.
Outside of Altoona now, mostly for car storage, yep.
Well, so several months ago, we had George Davison on here.
Yep.
And one of the things that he mentioned was that Pella Roll Screen was one of the original investors
in
the Iowa Interstate when that operation began.
Yep.
But yeah, so these were boxcar loads of lumber for the Pella Roll Screen.
Pella Roll Screen, yes. And doing some more switching there. There's Dick Atwell there at the switch. They're about ready to head back up to Altoona here. There's Dick Atwell checking over his train list. And that's Howard Tuttle. He was an engineer, former Rock Island engineer. His son also worked for the Interstate. But I don't think Howard ever worked for the Interstate, though. I think he retired before the Interstate took over. So that's going down the Pella branch. Here's Bill Kuba photo of Train 1. Coming into Altoona in June of 1983. You can see the 302 doesn't have any Milwaukee markings on there, but the 311 still does at the time. 9430 at Altoona there, the Pumpkin. These are in Council Bluffs in 1983. Like I mentioned earlier, these U-30Bs weren't very reliable, so a lot of them, when they went belly up, they took them out to Council Bluffs and stored them out there in the deadline out there. Okay, here's a train order. You can see, we were talking about track speeds earlier. Lots of slow orders out here on the west end and these are 363. That's just outside West Des Moines, and I only put one page of these here. This goes about 414, 415 out by around Anita or so. A lot of 25, 10, 25, 30 mile an hour. So
yeah.
9437, this is out by Altoona in the summer of 1983. That's a Rick Anderson photograph there. Here's another Bill Kuba photo of the 9431 and the 289. That's at Rock Island, summer of 1983. That building, depot, is still there.
Very nicely renovated.
Yes.
To see it in this condition, it really surprises me that they ended up saving it.
Here's a 9437 again. This is at Atlantic in the summer of 1983. This is a eBay slide I bought. no photographers listed. You can see there's a lot of tank cars there. The Iowa store did a lot of car storage in several different places, and I do remember being out at my uncle's that summer of '83 at a siding at East Menlo, which was east of Menlo, out east of town. Had a lot of these stored tank cars and hopper cars at the time, and those cars stayed out there pretty much through the end of the Iowa. So they did a lot of car storage too at the time. There's a 302 again. This is at Council Bluffs in summer 1983. I think this is a Dick Wilson photo there. And then starting about, let me look at my notes here. Starting in July of 1983, the Iowa leased some former Colorado and Southern and Fort Worth and Denver SD7s. And these engines lasted right up until the end of the Iowa Railroad. This is at Rock Island again, with a couple IC-28s back there trailing. There's same set of power, 6084, 9431, and 9432 at Rock Island. And I think the water tower, that's the old Farmall water tower in the background there.
So is this the only 6-axle power that they operated?
Yes. Yes,
These
these
SD7s.
SD7s were the only ones that they ever had 6 axles on. Here's Altoona again, 9437. I know this engine appears a lot in the program, but I have a lot of it, so I just thought I'd include it in here, doing a little switching. 6086 at Rock Island, and 1983 again. That's a Steve Smedley photo. You can see Fort Worth and Denver there on the side, and
FWD.
Childress, Texas, with the 9432, and you can see number 11 there in the background.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Believe this is Altoona here. This is a Bill Kuba photo. Again, 6083, another 6000, and then another Milwaukee Jeep. Another Fort Worth and Denver. 311 again at Council Bluffs. 319, you can see that they blanked out the Milwaukee logo on here, then stenciled it IRRC. That's at Council Bluffs there.
Yep.
This is in the early 1984. It's another John Leopard photo I bought off eBay. This is also at Milepost 148 there east of Atkinson, Illinois. I think they had a grain unloading facility where they transloaded grain from I think either truck to car, rail car, or vice versa. And I was talking to somebody that was kind of familiar with the operation at the time. A lot of the Iowa grain traffic didn't really go to ADM or the Kranick back then. A lot of it went to was transloaded on the barges at Rock Island, or it went to the Illinois River at Bureau and was transloaded on the barges there. So that's where a lot of the grain went at the time.
Yeah.
Before all the Kranick traffic took over. Okay, this is Al Ryder photo of the 1673, which is a GP7. This was also leased starting in July of 1983. And this is down on the Pella line out by Mitchellville.
Okay.
You can see the boxcar traffic for roll screen back there.
Yep.
And some grain to be spotted at some of the elevators there.
Rock Island hopper back on former home rails.
Yes, stenciled CNW.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, kind of a neat photo. Here's a Gary Powell photo at Moline again in early 1984 and 6083, and another SD7. And the train's on the old Rock Island because you can see there's two main tracks.
Yeah.
And then the track in the background, that would be the old dry line back there.
Well, yeah, so there's 4 tracks there.
Yeah,
because
one of those is the dry
yeah,
line.
Because, well, you've got 2 main lines of the Rock Island,
Yeah.
then you've got the BN main,
Yeah.
and then you got the dry line.
Dry line back there. Yep. Yeah.
It's all still there.
I think the Rock Island track's gone now. I think that's all been torn up, so
Right.
everything uses the old BN dry line main through this area now. Mm-hmm. Somebody will mention it here.
Yep.
They'll correct us. Anyway, here's another. This is at Rock Island again. You can see a little hodgepodge of power SD7, and a couple G28s, and another SD7. You can see the wheel. They got wheel sets sitting down there at the depot and everything like that. So
apparently this was the fueling track.
Yes, it was. That's where the rockets used to fuel, was right here at Rock Island in the glory days of the Rock Island. Yes.
Yes.
Here's Council Bluffs deadline here, and this is in March of 1984, and I don't know what unit number this is because the number boards are missing, of course.
Kind of hard to tell.
Kind of hard to tell, yeah. That's where a lot of these U-30Bs ended up. This is April 5th of 1984. This is a Rick Anderson photo of Train 1. This is between Anita and Wyoda, Iowa, of Train 1 with the Jeep 28 and SD7, and the same train. And the next slide should be coming around out east of Atlantic, across, going underneath the old hump bridge. That hump bridge is still there today.
They got a monster train out there. I feel like they probably had a hard time making the grades with maybe almost 30 cars.
And this is the same train just coming into Atlantic there at the east end, 9437 and 6085. Yeah, that's a pretty decent sized train for that day. More stored deadline power at Council Bluffs. You can see the Rock Island tank there in the background. 21 and 24. You can see that somebody shut out the windows on 24 already. Mm-hmm. And there's 25 again at Council Bluffs. 1984. 319 at Altoona in...
I'm telling you, somebody on the Sioux line saw that and said, we can do better than that.
We could probably do better than that.
We could do better than that.
Yes. Yes. 9432 is a Bill Kuba photo at Council Bluffs in about May of 1984 there with the 20 spot, and that might be in the deadline.
Might be.
Yes.
Isn't they both dead?
Yeah, could very well have been. 9437 again, that's at Altoona in 1984. 6088, that's a Bill Kuba photo again. That's at Council Bluffs. You can see the Fort Worth and Denver on the side there. Mm-hmm. 21 again. A lot of these I bought off eBay, and some of the photos aren't credited, unfortunately. So I just included them in here because this is stuff you can't get anymore, of course.
Right.
Yeah. 22, also Council Bluffs again.
This one actually had Iowa Railroad lettering on the side.
They did. Yes, it's one of the few that did.
Yeah.
Yeah. 6085, that's at Altoona, and right before the end of the Iowa. This is taken about October of 1984 by Bill Kuba there at Altoona. 6078, this is a Colorado and Southern.
Yep.
That's taken, I think, at Altoona. I think this is a Rick Anderson photo there. And that's what happened. This is at Council Bluffs. It's a Dick Wilson photo of the deadline there. You see the 1593. That was a former Jeep. I believe that was a former either CB&Q or Fort Worth and Denver GP7, and that was at least.
Yeah.
And you can see the other two U-30Bs just kind of had the windows shot out and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, you can basically tell the Jeep has the battery boxes, the batteries pulled out of the battery boxes. Yeah. That middle U-boat, it probably had a bunch of oil leak. You can see that on the walkway.
Yeah, that's true.
More oil on the walkway than there is in the engine block, probably.
Yeah, yeah. And there's this. Yeah, this is taken in early probably late 84, early 85. I don't have my notes here with me. I thought I had them with me, and I don't. But yeah, that's 4 of the 5 U-30Bs in the deadline there at Council Bluffs. Mm-hmm. 289. This is taken in May of 1985 out there at Council Bluffs. By this time, of course, this is the Iowa Interstate. And all this Iowa power was stored out there in the Bluffs for a few years before it went to the scrapper. But the 289, that was leased in October 1982 by the Iowa, and it stayed there on the railroad till the end. There's the 20 spot again and the 22, and you can see 9430 in the background. This is also Council Bluffs.
Yeah. It makes you think they're still operating at this point.
Yep. But no, all this stayed out there for, I think, a couple of years, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And there's the 25 also at Council Bluffs. That was the most reliable of the U-30Bs there. And that's the 11 out at Council Bluffs, also in 1987. That's a Dick Wilson photo there, too. 9430, stenciled IRC, also at Council Bluffs, at 6087 there. Mm-hmm. And so, after much deliberation and litigation, in the Iowa Interstate began operation in November of 1984, I think November 2nd of 84. And there was a big court battle between the Iowa Interstate, the Iowa, and the Milwaukee. There's a story that happened where an Iowa Interstate train tried to get in the Council Bluffs, but they couldn't get in because the Iowa had put a log chain, I think, across the track. So there's a lot of court issues that battle after Heartland bought the railroad and everything like that. And that's one of the things, the downfall of the Iowa Railroad, is they didn't really have the money. And when Heartland bought the property from the trustee, they had an operator designated to operate the main line. That was the Iowa Interstate. And the other thing that the Iowa Interstate and Heartland did, which the Iowa couldn't do, was they had access to Chicago.
Right.
So
because they got the trackage rights over the CSX.
Yeah.
The Chessie system at the time to operate all the way in.
Yeah.
And then they also operated down to Peoria right off the
bat. And the Peoria traffic didn't really start till about 1987. But yeah, that was another big thing that the interstate did that the Iowa couldn't do. So
right.
So we'll just end it right here with this Iowa Interstate State Fair special in 1988. And, you know, this main line has really come a long way in the last 40 years, because I can remember just the Iowa being very short trains and bad track and paper thin, you know, stuff, everything held by wire. And now you have a railroad that's like the Iowa Interstate has grown the traffic and redone the main line and made it pretty impressive. So
yes,
yeah,
this is an impressive passenger consist too. They got out here.
Yeah, I know. I'd like to have that back today. So.
Yeah, no kidding.
But anyway, that concludes my program, and I want to thank everybody for watching. And I hope if you got any questions, you know, feel free to email me direct. Otherwise, that concludes our program. And thank you, Tom, for recording this and help me put this together. And we encourage everybody to keep watching our YouTube shows. We're going to have several more here in 2022, and also keep watching our chapter website and Facebook pages for more information on these upcoming programs. They're great, and they're a lot of fun to do.
Yes, we've really enjoyed it. We're a year and a half into this now.
Yeah, I know.
And this is your second time on
my second time around
program. Yes. It goes better the second time around.
I think it does too.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Dave. We're going to sign off for December. Join us in January
with Russ Lyon.
Russ Lyon, that's right. And he is going to have a very impressive show to share with us at that time. So thank you very much, Dave. And that's going to be it for today.